UserScripts are incredibly powerful because you can add features to websites that you wish that they had. This is my Stack Overflow profile. You can see all of the answers that I've written, but what you can't see is which of these answers are to my own questions, because you can answer your own questions. So what we're going to build today is a user script that gets this information and adds it to the UI. So this is what it looks like normally. I am going to turn on this user script in Tampermonkey and then reload the page. And now you can see that I've added this line, own question, own question, own question, own question. Cool. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is click Inspect Element just to bring up the DevTools. I'm going to go to the Sources tab. And then this is the script we're going to be writing. It's really quite small. Okay, so let's do this in a new Chrome instance. So again, open up DevTools, go to the Sources tab, and let's create a new snippet. Let's call this Stack Overflow UI mod. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is find this element right here, this row, and we want to add another div in each one of these so that we can put our text in there later on when we select it. So the first thing I'm going to do is go down to the console and figure out how to select the elements that I want. So let's use query selector all, and then let's have a look. Let's inspect this. So this is answer link, and one entire row is answer summary. So let's do dot answer dash summary. And you'll see we have a node list of 10. That's good. We've already got it there. But let's modify that just a little bit. Let's do answer summary and then div dot answer link. Okay. Node list of 10. And these should be our links. Perfect. Going back to the Sources tab, I'm going to say create divs for. This is just a little comment. For own question attribute. Okay, so let's create a variable. Let's call this previous siblings list. And then we're just going to copy in what we wrote down in the console. Now we want to loop over that. So for let previous sibling of previous siblings list, and we're going to create something like is own box. We're going to do document dot create element and create a div. Now we're going to set our class name so we can select it later on when we go to write into it. Equals, well, we'll just call this isOwnBox. Sure, why not? And then let's set the inner text. And right now, let's just set it to n/a, just to see that it's working. Okay, so now we have to attach this element to the document. So let's go previous sibling dot insert adjacent element. And this takes two parameters. The first thing is there's a list of strings you can add in here. After end would mean essentially you want it after the element that you've selected, after this element right here. And then the second parameter is the element that you want to insert there. So that should do it. Let's just run this to make sure that works. There we go. Okay, so we have placeholders now. So now we have to actually think about the logic of how this is going to be done. So we can get our profile ID from this page. And then we can also get the profile ID of the author of the question on this page. So let's grab a list of these links, and then let's loop through those links to get the profile ID from those pages. So that gets the profile ID. I prepared this before, obviously, but essentially you're just going to want to look through the elements, figure out, okay, where can I get this ID up here, and then choose one. That's really all I'm doing here, and then I'm getting the href attribute and splitting it by the slashes. I'm also going to do the same thing for the links variable. Now, in this links part, we're using document.querySelectorAll, which returns a collection. So in order to get the href, we need to first turn that collection into an array so we can use the array.map method. Whereas in the profile ID, we're using document.querySelector, which only returns one object, so we can just get the attribute href. Okay, now I'm just going to add a little comment here to describe this next section. We need, as I said, we need to loop through the links, and we need to send a fetch request for each of those. So we're going to pass the link in here, and then what I'm actually going to write here, I have to make this method async. And you'll see why in a moment, but we're going to return the response, or we're going to get the response, rather. And we're going to say let HTML equal await res.text. We are awaiting this because this method returns a promise. And we have some more things to do here in this little method that we're creating right here. Because we also need the URL. So then we can return an object with the HTML and the URL. Okay. And add another then. We've got the data incoming from there. Do something like that. If we didn't make this asynchronous and await the res.text, then the promise that that returned might not have resolved before moving on to this next then. And then we wouldn't have the data that we want. And now we need a DOM parser in order to extract that profile ID from the document that's returned. So we'll say let parser equal new DOM parser. And let doc equal parser dot parse from string. And the string that we're going to pass in is that data.html. So this attribute of this object that we created right here. And the MIME type is text/HTML. So in this part, I'm explaining what I was doing, and I actually ran into a little bit of a bug. I found a case where this get elements by class name would not work as I expected. So here is the corrected version. Okay, now we have to get the author ID from all of the questions. So we're looping through the links, and we need to extract this. But this is an important piece of logic because sometimes you might have someone edit the question, someone else edit the question after this person asks, in which case the code is going to have to be a little bit different. So here you can see we do document.querySelector. Just to get this element, we see, okay, the length is 1, but if we were to do it on the other one, the length would be 2. Okay, let's go back to our sources tab. It doesn't really matter where we do it. And let's grab the question element just to make this a little bit easier to read. We don't have to do this, but I like to. And in this case, we're just going to do this document.querySelector question. We copy that, and doc is our document, not document itself. And now we'll do the post author ID. And for this, I'm going to use a ternary expression rather than an if else, just because it's a little bit easier. There's no difference logically. And we're going to do that user details. Just like that. And then dot length. If the length is equal to 1, then we will get the first element from that. The length is equal to 2, then we will get the second element. So change that. Perfect. Okay. So now we have the author ID. So we got our profile ID up here. So what we want to do is we want to compare that, because this is the whole point of the project, right? If profile ID is equal to the post author ID, then we're going to modify our UI. So let's grab the question ID. Let the question ID equal, we can get this from this data URL, right? Data.url.split. and we want to split it on the /. We'll get the fifth one. Okay, and the final thing we're going to do is figure out how to set that inner text. First I'll copy it in, and then I'll explain the logic. Actually, at this point, this is completely done. We can go ahead and run this, see if it works. Yep, there we go. So now any question that is answered by the author will be marked own question. As far as the logic of this goes right here, we are using this document.query selector to get the specific question, and then we're going up to the grandparent and then back down to that is own box. So now I'm going to show how we do that in the HTML, or what the code actually does in the HTML. So first we use query selector to find the element with that question ID. And then we're going to select the parent of that, so this answer link, and then the parent of that, the answer summary class. And we're going to use query selector again to select this is own box, which is where we're writing own question. And so that's how we're making sure that we are marking the correct row. So the last thing we want to do is just copy this to Tampermonkey. I'm going to copy this entire thing. And I've got another one up here. I actually need to modify this because it was incorrect last time. Copy that in. Save it. And we need to do a not really regular expression, but a match here for the URL, so that this script will only run when we're on stackoverflow.com/users/something/ and then this tab ANS is what I am looking for. Let's save that and let's give it a go. Let's turn this script on. Let's refresh. And there we go. You can see that it automatically runs. If we go to somebody else's profile, it should work the same way. How about this profile right here? And we go to activity. You'll notice it's not running. And then when we go to the answers, you can see our user script is running. And it seems that none of these are their own question. Okay, let's try by newest. And unfortunately, we have to reload the page in order to see it again whenever we switch between these. That's one thing I could add in the future. I could make it so it will automatically rerun anytime one of these is clicked. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments, or if you have any other ideas about what I could add, yeah, then let me know. So here you can see, yeah, there's a couple that this guy answered his own questions. So all of this code will be on GitHub, and the link will be in the description.